All right, I'd like to call the order of the committee of the whole for September 22nd, 2020 at 5:20 PM. Roll call.
Alderman Madden.
Here.
Alderman Kubaki.
Here.
Alderman Engelhardt.
Here.
Alderman Kapusta.
Here.
Alderman Terrence.
Here.
Alderman Hamel.
Here.
Alderman Wolf.
Here.
And Mayor Petfalski. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Statement of public notice.
The meeting was noticed in accordance with the open meeting law.
Approval of the agenda.
Move to approve. Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda's approved. Approval of minutes from May 26, 2020.
Move to approve. Second.
Any adjustments or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Approval of minutes from September 8th, 2020.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those pass unanimously. New business, presentation by assessor regarding the assessment of commercial properties. How you doing?
You may have to turn that mic on, Mark. It's on this side. You can tap it first and see. Nope.
So do you want to warn everyone about asking about specific properties or just keep the questions general? Because we don't want to lead.
Yeah, this is just kind of a presentation. When we had talked about the case, we were talking about Walmart the other day, and you guys had some questions, just general questions. We really don't want to talk about the Walmart case because that's not been noticed. All that we're really going to talk about is Mark's going to give us a little presentation on the assessment of commercial properties, and if you guys had any questions.
Fair enough? Yep. And if I could, I do have some handouts if I could approach.
Perfect. If you can have this.
It's working.
It is. It is?
Hear it out there.
Oh.
It's kind of like an echo to us.
Yeah.
There's a little, turn it up a little bit.
Is that what I need to do?
Maybe she can adjust
Can you
it.
turn his mic? Thank you.
You're here now.
Oh, that's okay. I can.
All right.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. My name is Mark Link, City Assessor. Just a brief history. I have 31 years in the business and have been involved here in the city of Muskego, specifically in some capacity since 1994, performing multiple revaluations, assessor services, and so forth. I was out of town at the last meeting for the specific case, and the city attorney had indicated that the council might have some general questions regarding the assessments. That's what I'm here for today. And then also touch base a little bit. The handout that I just gave was a little handout on big box type properties. If you look at the handout, the first page is all big box sales that we found in the state. And it's something that we continue to monitor. It's part of our business because we've been in this fight like other assessors for many years now. So we're constantly monitoring what sales are taking place to either support the other side or our side of the argument. So the first page is really just all sales that have occurred. And the price per square foot is the second column from the right. And the last column is some internal notes. We don't, this is our own internal document. We don't get too caught up with the spelling and so forth. It's just notes for us to reference. So you'll see the price per square foot and some of those old historic dark store sales in the $26, $27 per square foot range, $17 per square foot range. That was really the genesis of the start of this whole big box argument, and the appraisals that were brought to us. They were arguing for $30, $35 per square foot. Over the years, they've given up on that $30 to $35 per square foot range. And if you look at some of the other sales, going to page 2, On page 2 in the upper left, if it's not overstapled there, what that represents are the sales that have occurred, and what was removed were the $16 and $20 per square foot sales and the $125 per square foot sale, which was a leaseback. Leaseback sales, if you don't know, is a business that's operating will be bought, and as part of the purchase, they're going to lease it back from whomever they purchased it from. It's just kind of a win-win for both parties that way, and the rents are often above market rate, and the sale price is above market rate because they're guaranteed rental income for the next several years. So page 2 is really taking the low and high occurrences out, and in the upper right, you'll see the maximum, the minimum, and the median and mean price per square foot on the far right. And then on the last page is really just narrowing it down, taking out some of the properties that are actually being leased. So on the big box properties, there are a couple different types. There's the total dark properties. There's the properties that are active and occupied by the retailer themselves. And then there are certain properties that are owned by a private entity that are being rented by a big box operator. The properties that are being rented by the big box operator, you'll see the sale price per square foot is higher, and that's because the person that is purchasing the property is really purchasing the lease. The lease is there for another 10, 20, 30 years. It's a big box retailer that's not anticipating going out of business, so it leans towards a higher price per square foot based on an anticipated return on the investment. So if you look at the last page, which would really be the sales that are non-stress type sales of properties that were placed on the market. You'll see some notes there, and I'll be happy to answer any of the questions regarding to the notes. But in the upper right, you'll see the median there is $55 rounded, and the mean price per square foot is $58 rounded. I've been involved in multiple mediations on the big box properties. When the attorney contacted me and asked me if I was in agreement with a certain price on that property, I was. It was a few dollars per square foot, and that particular price is still above what most of these have settled for throughout the state. The majority of these big boxes and this retailer in specific have settled in the $48 to $55 per square foot range. That's all I have, and I'm open for questions.
Anyone have specific questions?
So cost per square foot is the anchor for commercial real estate, correct?
It's just a summary. It's what you see on the exhibit is the sale price per square foot. The cost to build, depreciated, may or may not directly be tied to what the actual market value is of a property.
So the cost per square foot, is that driven also by location and what surrounds the property?
Yeah, the sale price per square foot, all of those things that you've heard over the years, the location certainly drives it. If you find the right, and for these user-specific type properties, the key is for them to find someone that can take that property and convert it into a use for the new owner. If you look at on page 3, the second occurrence was converted to a furniture store. The third occurrence was converted to a facility that assists the blind with employment. So the key on these is for the seller to find, like any commercial property, is to find someone that has a need for this type of facility, and the location is suitable for their needs.
Okay. Would this be similar to the Walmart that was in Hales Corners, it's now Festival Foods? Was that a leaseback operation, or is that?
No, that was a restricted use sale. So in that particular sale, it was sold, and the purchaser was not allowed to use it as that facility. I believe that was actually a church.
Okay,
yeah, the Walmart was sold and converted to a church.
The Kmart, I mean.
Right.
Yeah.
The Kmart was converted to the Festival Foods.
Okay. Do you know what the cost per square foot?
I'm sorry?
Do you know what the cost per square foot was in that transaction?
On the Festival Food property? I do not.
Okay.
So this is pretty broad as far as dollar range goes with it sounds like a lot of negotiation.
As far as the sales go,
Yeah, I
or
mean,
for the court cases?
Well, I'm being general.
Right, okay. Right, yeah.
I mean, you've got, even after you throw out the high and the low, you still have some in the 80s and some in the 40s, which is a pretty significant.
Correct.
So there's lots of room for interpretation, I guess, would be, okay.
Yeah, the purpose of this was just to let the committee know, are we in the ballpark here on this property? If you drilled down on these and made adjustments for age, condition, and so forth, you can fine tune it a few dollars per square foot up and down. This is just, again, just for the purpose of, are we in the ballpark here at the $59, $60 a square foot?
So you're just looking at the mean value? I mean, is that, I don't know anything about commercial real estate.
Sure, no. So the exhibit is not presented as to how we arrived at the value. The exhibit is only to show, is the proposed assessment in the agreement somewhat reasonable comparative to what properties are selling for. That's the only purpose of this agreement.
Oh, okay.
When we're looking at the actual valuation, we're trying to find sales like these. We're trying to find rental information on these properties. But we do know from the multiple mediations that have taken place over the years, we do know what's going to happen if it goes to mediation. We do consider that as well.
Who determines the comps on these? So, I mean, some of these might be close and some seem pretty far away. And when they're pretty far away, you're bypassing places that I would think are comparable.
Well, that's the argument when we go to mediation. That's been the historic argument, is the property owner's representative will have an appraisal completed. That includes sales in Eau Claire or wherever the case may be. So first of all, there's nothing that restricts. There's actually a court case, and the name of it is escaping my mind, that specifically states that the assessor does not have to stay in the municipality. You can go all over the state. So our argument from the assessor standpoint over the years has been, yes, this sale is in Vernon, nothing against Vernon, but it's not metro Milwaukee area, and the adjustments made by that appraiser at that time, we felt were insignificant. So that's been the back and forth between the assessor's office and the appraisers and representatives is, yes, it's a sale, yes, it's a big box. We don't agree that that location is anything comparative to the city of Muskego. We feel the age warrants a larger adjustment for this one being built in Muskego in 2010 versus 1988 and so forth.
Go on, sorry.
Oh, yeah, just to conclude on that, is when appraisers are performing an appraisal on the property, they're used to a rule of 25% net adjustments or less. That's kind of what they go by. And our rebuttal to that is, if you use these sales, the adjustments are 200% or 300% in some cases. And then it would come down to a judge, if the judge would decide it's okay to use a 200% adjustment instead of a 25% adjustment. So the appraisers are taking these sales at $30, $35 per square foot and used to a rule that they can't adjust more than 25% to get an indicated market value for the subject property. And we say, no, there needs to be a larger adjustment for these differences in locations compared to the age, condition, location, and so forth for the city. Mm-hmm. And it would all come down to what a judge really would indicate if it went that far. And we have been that far before. And if you're interested in Grand Chute, we had a property, I believe we were at 11 million. They had an appraisal for 3, and the judge threw them both out and came up with a number. So we just don't know what you're going to run into. That's why outside counsel, from my experience, encourages a settlement mediation because of things like that. There's some unknowns if you go beyond the mediation level.
So if you have two properties, say two separate 100,000 square foot buildings, built on roads, same traffic counts, one is being occupied by a national hardware chain as a big box, and the other one's, bricks, car parts, and I'm making my first go of something.
Sure.
Same construction costs, same similar materials and everything else. Would they have the same assessment?
What the law indicates is that you need to take what's called market rents if you're using the income approach to value. So in that situation, they should be the same. If everything else is the same, you can't you can't penalize a property for what's called in the industry having the national sign on the door or on the facade. So if it's the same building, same utility and so forth, they should have comparable assessments.
Okay.
So the viability of the business, assuming that they're paying their fair share, it has nothing to do with the appraised value. So if you get a business that's a very lucrative business in the same building, you're not penalizing the builder or the operator who's got a lesser income.
Yes, business value is specifically excluded from real estate assessments.
Okay, which seems to blow holes in the dark store theory.
Well, it's an ongoing scenario, and as you know, the legislature hasn't done a whole lot as far as that type of thing goes. In what I'll call from a simple assessment standpoint, I'll go back to the mayor's question in that if you have the two buildings, one's profitable because of their business or their national name, that really has nothing to do with how we're going to assess the real estate.
Okay.
Are they allowed to argue the fact that if you, say the national chain is now selling that building and moving to a different location, that the traffic counts that were on that road, they're going to say are because they were there, which would change the value of that business because of the traffic count?
So for traffic counts, one has to take a look at what's the variance. So if you're getting 10,000 cars a day versus 8,000 cars a day, is that going to be anything substantial, for the location of retail? When you get that small of a number, 2,000 difference or 10 or 20% difference, I really don't know the answer as what the impact would be to the retail market in that instance. But if you're asking if the traffic on Street A, where they were located, is lesser than Street B, where they're moving to, then that certainly would indicate that what would now become the dark store, if that's the scenario you're describing, would be worth less than the open, thriving retail space. Did I answer that? Or did I
Somewhat.
go around the board a little bit
I
on
went
you?
around the board, but I got it.
Okay, yeah, so I'll just expound on that a little bit. That's been our argument over the years as well, where a retailer, they go dark, and these 6 locations in the greater Milwaukee area, they're going to go dark for one reason or another. They're not performing, whatever the case may be. Our argument at mediation and so forth has been they went dark for a reason. They themselves chose to close those stores for a reason that was based on their location, had to be part of it. Therefore, you can't use that sale with a minimum adjustment compared to a Muskego location and so forth.
Okay.
I know that you say outside counsel likes to settle all these cases, and I understand that. Do you see any trend happening where municipalities are now starting to say enough's enough and we want to fight this all the way? Do you see any trend like what's happening in those types of cases?
The only one I'm aware of is Tosa is the one that locked their heels on that, and they might have been successful in the past 6 months. I'd have to go back and check on that, but Wauwatosa was the one that was going to go ahead and lock their heels and take it all the way.
Okay.
Everyone else has discussed it, contemplated it, and it seems to
And
be
ended up settling?
weighing the risk and so
Yeah.
forth, decide not to, right?
Any other questions?
Yeah, recourse, I guess. The only recourse a city can take for tax purposes would be legal. I mean, as far as having an appraisal done, and of course, the people that are building it or whatever are going to use the farthest away and try to or want to minimize their taxes. But the appraiser that's used by the city, what is our recourse to get if they used comps that we think they shouldn't have used?
Oh, that would be a question for the city attorney. In that
Okay, so
instance. If you're in disagree, if your question is, are you in disagreement with the third-party appraisal that was performed on the city's behalf?
Right, I
Is that your
just wonder if there's, I mean, if they went to further places away instead of closer ones that they could have used, as an appraiser, we can't come to you and have you reappraise it, or how would that work?
Yeah, you could always ask me to take a look at it, and like I did on the last one, and see if I'm in agreement with it. My experience is those third-party appraisers are coming in higher because it's a little different methodology that's being used than what the assessed value is. on them. But I understand the desire to want to stay close and so forth, but with these types of properties, you can't always do that. You
Well,
do
with the
have
Dark Star, they're going further out looking for
Right.
them. That's
Right.
the difference. And
Yeah,
that's
for-
my point.
Yeah, that's the representatives, the tax appellants appraisal. I've certainly seen that to be the pattern. For the appraisers that are hired for the city side of the argument, I have not necessarily seen that to be the pattern. And again, they tend to be higher than what the assessed value is, the appraiser that's hired to perform one on the city's behalf.
Well, I'm sorry, go John.
Is there a noticeable difference in this current climate for people like you? What you have to do as far as your job, what you're looking at, has it impacted the way you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, it certainly got our attention years ago when all of these cases started going on throughout the state. So the answer to the question is yes, where we were, I don't want to say too aggressive. I think we started out at around $75 per square foot back in 2015, 2016. And then, all of these dark store cases started to come up, and we did have to ourselves take a second look at how we're assessing them. And we're constantly analyzing that today, year to year.
So are you saying that assessors are now more cautious as how high they are assessing, or?
Well, you have to
These
be.
properties,
Yeah,
yeah.
you have to be.
Okay, is that a trend that's going to continue?
For us,
Yeah.
I can speak for us. We're not, let me answer it this way. We're not going to make the assessment artificially low just to avoid conflict or mediation. Okay, if we think that we have a number, and I had told the council back in 2018 that I'm good at leaving at this for 2018, and if they want to go further, we'll go further. If you recall that back in 2018. But, here we are, and the pattern is there where they come back after the year of the agreement expires, and I would have been ready to go either way, but.
And is this only happening with the larger, or the big box, that kind of thing versus smaller commercial properties, or is it across the board?
No, it tends to be more in the big box retail.
Just
for
the
that
bigger ones
matter.
are where it's impacting? Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
One last comment, it's more of a comment than anything else. On page 2, I'm just fascinated by items 15 and 16. Here are two stores, similar sized, similar land acreage, sold within a little over a month of each other. Square foot difference, $30 a square foot. It's,
Yeah,
it's just unbelievable.
it is, and what it's going to come down to, I haven't explored the lease agreements in either one of these, but one of the things could justify that is the $82 per square foot. If they're in year 5 of a 25-year lease, that's different than the property above it that might be in year 20 of a 25-year lease.
Okay.
So that could be one scenario that would explain that $30 per square foot difference. But I agree, when you look at it, it makes no sense, and that's why we have to try to narrow and funnel it down to, the best that we think we can.
Sure.
I think there's a big difference between Edwards Drive, though, and Paradise Drive in West Bend. Paradise Drive is.
There must be. I don't know West Bend,
Main road in West Bend, and
but Lake Geneva's Lake Geneva. Yeah. Yeah.
So and I'll be happy to continue on with answering questions, but just one more statement in that the current proposed settlement agreement is $5 to $10 more per square foot than the other settlements that I've been part of throughout the state.
all right, any other questions? Thank you very much, Mark.
Okay, thank you all.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to continued discussion on the mayor's proposed 2021 operating budget. Now, we will be having, just want to remind you guys, if you haven't noticed it, we are having a closed session after the council meeting to discuss the HR position. But if there's anything else on the budget that you guys want to weigh in on, Sharon and I, Jenny are all ears.
I'm saving myself for closed session.
All right, fair enough. Anyone else? All right, hearing none. Could I get communications miscellaneous business as authorized by law? Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Eileen and Kevin.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned at 6:44, 5:44, I'm sorry.
Break.
Boy, that was a long meeting. Thank you.
Break some.